Welcome to the third episode of Time to Unpack. I am your host, Tiffany Singleton, and today we'll be once again covering the topic, marriage, love, and communication. How important is that to marriage? If you're new to following our channel, which is Flow with Tip, please do not forget to hit the subscribe button and the notification bell to be notified of all upcoming episodes. Thank you for joining us. At this time, I'm going to allow our guests to introduce themselves, and we'll start with you, Quincy.
My name is Quincy Sutton. I am from Swansea, South Carolina. I'm a proud husband, father, and servant to my community.
I am Curtis Singleton. I reside in Macon, Georgia. I'm a hospice chaplain and a Christian educator. I've been married for 1 year, 5 months, 26 days, and 5 hours to Tiffany, who is not the host.
My name is Charles Kearse II. I am a servant above all. I'm married to the love of my life for 16 years, Shanda Kearse. We have 4 beautiful children. I reside here in Columbia, South Carolina, and my job is to know him and to make him known.
Amen.
Hi, my name is Terry Bennett, and I live in Columbia, South Carolina. I'm a wife to Leroy Bennett and a bonus mom to 3 wonderful children, and I'm a prepare and enrich counselor.
All right, General, thank you for your introductions and welcome to the show. So let's start off with this statement, and I want each of you to complete this. Marriage has been what?
Marriage has been amazing.
Marriage has been transformational.
Ditto, transformational and evolutionary.
So let's go a little further into that. So can you please describe just a little bit about what you mean? It's been amazing, it's been transformational, but help our audience understand what that experience has been like for you.
I think marriage for me specifically has been something that has revealed more about who I am than anything ever that I've been through in my life. The older I become, the longer we are married, the more the Lord reveals to me who I am as a person. So I think that through the good, the bad, marriage has shown me the highs and lows of life in a way that nothing else, I believe, could show me. So that's why I say amazing, because I leave each situation, each struggle, each win amazed at how God has grown us and has grown me.
Yeah, for me, I like what Quincy said, the transformational part, and it bringing forth a self-awareness first to you of who exactly you are and what you might need to work on to help God facilitate in you what marriage is designed biblically to do, which is transform you into being more like Christ, meaning that it makes you become less of yourself and more of someone else.
Yeah, I agree with both of them. For me, I always say I didn't become a man until I found my wife. The seed was planted. My parents, they did everything they're supposed to do, but that becoming a real man, so to speak, and hopefully she can attest to this, that I became a man once she came into my life. That was the part of me that had to grow. I had to rise to the occasion so that I could be the provider, the protector, the caregiver, and then that Christ-like figure. Learn to suffer in silence, things of that nature. These are really mature things that I had to evolve into because I didn't understand it until I got into that situation.
Yeah.
Excellent. So let's talk about, I know sometimes people say, well, we don't know what men really want, or the man might say, we don't know what the woman really wants. So let's talk about that just a little bit. When you were in your quest for finding that God-designed mate, or that person that was specifically designed for you, what is it that you were looking for, and how did you know that your wife was that person?
Well, I knew that I was looking for different than what I had found in the past. Because first, like Quincy said, is that I had to come to a certain self-awareness about myself. And what was, I started seeing, when I looked back over my life, I saw patterns. I saw a pattern. And in my last relationship, when I sat back and said, wow, what exactly happened here? And I began to see that over my life, it was like a 2-year pattern that I was just, for whatever reason, just not fulfilled anymore in a relationship. So that part about me, I had to work on and become aware of why was this happening. And it went back to a place in my family of origin, my birthplace that we kind of talked about, me and the guys before the panel discussion started, that birth order did something to my life. And at 2 years old, I needed to receive some stuff that I didn't receive because of my birth pattern, right? And it hurt. It hurt. And for 42 years, I was living life in that 2-year cycle of hurt placed upon me from a woman. My mom, don't get me, that the most loving person. I ain't never heard her use the word hell out of context. The perfect mother. But that was just what circumstances dealt to me. I had to become aware of that. I had to wrestle with that and heal from that. Because in most relationships, we got to do some forensics, some relationship forensics, and find out, all right, where is this coming from? So I wanted different than what I had experienced. Not saying that it was everyone's fault in the relationship. Part of it was my fault. But in order to receive different, I had to do different. All right. So that's the first thing I think. We got to take responsibility. And in that responsibility, what I did is I dropped all of my single friends because I knew that I wanted different.
That's right.
And I befriended male figures and mentors in my life who I looked to as having Christ-like, positive, quality marriages. I didn't want what single people is. Nothing against single people. I was once one, but they can't give me no advice about marriage. So I took 2 years of prayer and partnership in prayer with those guys who I befriended. And I wasn't so egotistical to tell them, not to reveal to them what I was looking for and what I wanted. And they were in prayer with me. For 2 years, I prayed for my wife that I didn't even know. Yeah, so when she showed up in my life, everything that I was praying for was right there in front of me. And in the conversation, I said, wow. Some things that she was revealing to me of what she had been through and going through when I was praying. I didn't know that that's what she was going through, but I was praying for her. So I knew it was her. It doesn't have to be in the physical for us, y'all. This thing takes place in the spiritual before we were even in our mama's womb. The Lord knew the place for us. So that's how I found out that that was my wife. It was revealed to me through prayer.
I want to speak to what he talked about. Well, culturally, it's amazing because, in our culture, that position that you're talking about is described as being the yelling baby. Have you all ever heard that before? Yes. And that is that child that is kind of given the back end or the less, I would say, the attention is not given to as much because of the responsibilities of the family dynamic. Well, that being said, to really play off of that, I was the youngest of three. I was the only boy. And I was the only boy also of my aunts and my uncles. So, of course, I was raised in a situation and a dynamic where everybody kind of catered to my needs. And I was that spoiled one. Now, I was also hardworking. I was the one whenever anybody needed something, they called on Quincy. And it was a pleasure for me to do that because I loved my relatives. I loved my family members. But with that being said, going into a marriage relationship and looking for a wife, of course, it first begins with looking at what you need. It first begins with, when you first begin your process, what do I want in a woman? Not what can I provide or what can I be for my bride? Right. And so that was where I first began. But then the closer we got to marriage and whenever the Lord placed Cassandra in my life, then I began to see how I started making sacrifices the closer we got to marriage. And I knew that I had found the one that the Lord wanted me to marry whenever I was giving her things like the PIN number to my debit card, my credit card accounts, when I started giving her, when she knew the last word of my social. Because what it showed me is that I was ready to relinquish that which meant most to me. And growing up in a house with my sisters, my older sister left whenever I was in 6th grade. My oldest sister, which is 10 years my senior, was almost like a mom figure to me. She left when I was in 3rd grade. So I was primarily raised in a house by myself. I never had to share a bathroom. I never had to share a bedroom. I never had to share clothes. I never shared toiletry items, anything. Whenever I was thought in my mind, I was ready to give that up and share it with somebody. That's when I knew I was ready for marriage. And so I was looking for someone who I wanted to share that place with. And I think the biggest struggle my first year of marriage is I did not want to share toothpaste. But that was because of how I was raised. I was raised with mine. And so what ended up happening is I was like, you know what? In order to bridge this gap, I'm going to buy 2 tubes because I like to fold from the bottom.
And she just squeezed.
But guess what? But the lesson in that is whenever you love somebody and whenever you want to become one with somebody, you make whatever sacrifices are necessary in order to make that union work. So it's my pleasure to sacrifice. It's my pleasure to give. So with that being said, to answer your question, I think the question really evolved from knowing what you were looking for in a mate and those things. It was somebody that I was willing to give up everything for.
Yeah.
That's some good stuff right there.
I think everything they said was pretty much spot on. Mine was a little bit different. I literally fell head over heels in love with my wife. If there's any such thing as love at first sight, I loved her at first sight, and I wanted to know her. But not just know her biblically. That was there, but not just know her biblically. But the thing that got me, that really caught my attention, was when you read scripture and it describes a wife as a helpmate. My wife demonstrated those skills before I asked her to be my wife. I'll never forget this. We were visiting my parents, and we had the 2 boys, and we had bicycles and everything. We were just visiting for the day. And she was like, all right, let's get packed up. And I was doing something, and me and my mom walked outside, and she had already grabbed the bike, and she was putting it on the back of the truck. My mom was like, you need to marry her. You need to get this one. And I mean, we were just blown away. But every step of our relationship, she always presented herself as my helpmate. It was almost like in the other ear, the Holy Spirit was saying, this is it. This is the one. And it hit me. Matter of fact, I laugh about it now because I was by myself in my apartment, really having a great time. And I said, I think I want to marry her. And I was like, who said that? I had to check myself because it came out of nowhere. And I was like, I wasn't expecting. I was like, did I just say that? I said, oh, goodness. And then there were other moments where I had, she was with me. I had opportunities to be with other people, and the phone rang, and she's there, and I'm on the phone. I'm like, yeah, I can't do this no more. And she was the one. That was it. I can't imagine life without her. Yeah. When I look at the scripture, love is patient, love is kind, love is this. I think the 2 of us complete that. We merge together. I like to look at it as a DNA, the double helix, right? And the purple and the pink make blue to make us one.
That's awesome. So what would you say if you had to identify 10 top questions or things that should be discussed prior to marriage? What would those things be?
10?
I know it could be like 75, but let's talk about the top 10.
Top 10.
Top 10?
Top 10.
Wow.
10.
Is there 10 of them?
Oh, there is. There's 10.
It's actually about 75. But what would you say would be most important to you? You can do 10 collectively. Things that you would need to know about your mate or you think that need to be discussed prior to marriage?
Yeah.
Of course, childbirth. That needs to be discussed in a topic that, and when my wife and I discussed it, she told me of her hindrances. She wanted to have children, all right? But some female problems was preventing it. All right. That don't mean that God can't do it.
That's right.
Oh, that's right.
That don't mean that God can't do it. Right now, she's 4.5 months pregnant, and I'm saying this publicly. She said, I can't keep my mouth shut, but she done gave me, permission to reveal it a week ago. So right now, you know, God came through, but it was things that both of us wanted. And those things that you discussed, that you find that both of you want in unison are things that can pull you and hold you together. And by virtue of that, like Charles said, man, you can't imagine life with anybody else when some of those things that you agree upon that are challenges that you get over, you can't imagine life any other way.
Wow.
So let me play some tension
Okay.
in this and play the devil's advocate.
And we probably going to the same place.
I totally agree with him because children were something that when we first got started, I wanted 6.
Right.
That was what I said. I always said I wanted 6 children. So I agree with you, and I think that if I went in our courtship, if Cassandra would have told me that she did not want to have children, I probably would have said, then she's not the woman for me. But we both wanted children, and so that was wonderful. However, I will say this, as a testimony, when we got married, we immediately said we were going to wait 3 or 4 years before we had children. And in the course of that, we found out that my wife would not be able to have children because of some things that developed right after we got married. And so, of course, in our mind, we were like, well, let's do all we can in order to go ahead and get pregnant. It took us 5 years to have children. So the first 5 years of our marriage, we were going through fertility treatment. We were going through all types of therapies in order to get pregnant. And in that interim, it began to affect her health in such a way that it was debilitating. The way she looked changed, and not only her size, but the way she looked, her skin, like the medicines they had her on. I can't remember what type of medicines they're called, but the different types of medicines they had her on changed her sleeping pattern. She would have different symptoms that were not favorable. And I got to the place, we did get pregnant and we miscarried. And I remember it like it was yesterday. We were at Disney World on a family vacation and we were sitting down because we didn't want to put strain on her. And the next week we lost that child. And so I told her, I said, no more fertility treatments, no more medicines, no more therapy, because I married you because I wanted you. If the Lord wants us to have children, he will allow, and what I learned is at the end of the day, whether you go through fertility treatments, whether you have any type of therapy, if the Lord wants the womb open, it will open. So with that being said, now I'm with you, but just to place some tension on the discussion, I told her that I married you because I wanted to have a life partner. Whenever these children have graduated and go on their own, I'm going to be left with you. So if it takes me risking your health in order to have a child, then I don't want any children because I want a wife. Now, hold on a minute. Guess what? We stopped fertility treatments. We stopped all of that. All we did was have fun. And we got pregnant.
It didn't happen. There you go.
And that was, the Lord fulfilled my desires. That is what I wanted, because I do believe that the perfect image of marriage is the mirror of the church, which is productivity and reproduction. So I know what you're saying is Bible, and I agree with you. But for couples that don't have that fortune, or for ladies, now we see women are now getting married in their 40s and in their 50s and their 60s, and that's not an option for them. So I'm not disagreeing with you, please sir, no. Because children were at the top of my list too. But more than anything, I wanted a life partner, which leads me to my number 2 thing that we need to have. And I'm not skipping the subject, but the number 2 was it's got to have the same goals.
Oh, that's good right there.
Right.
Okay, so now we go back to that.
Now we go back to that because the question was not the solution or the outcome. The question was, what is
The prerequisite. You're right.
What is the discussion that you have?
You're right.
It's very important to be have the same goal in
That's
that
right.
area.
Right.
And you and your wife did have the same goal.
Absolutely.
That's correct.
She had some hindrances medically. My wife, we had the same goal. She had some hindrances medically that God took care of, just like you said. And mind you, I said, have children, not necessarily bear children.
Good. I like it. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Because
I'm so glad you clarified that.
Because I'm going to step in with that. As a woman who was married older at 42, we tried.
Right.
I had 2 miscarriages, and now
Right.
I'm at 54, and I wasn't able to give birth. But I bless God, he was married before, and I'm a bonus mom to 3 children, and I helped raise, those children. And I love them because they are an extension of him.
Right.
And so God has placed, he said he places us in households. So he placed me there to be a bonus mom to these children. And so I'm blessed in that area. And so sometimes it does not happen, even for the woman who is waiting, because I was waiting to be married. And I wanted to do things the right way, right? The Christian way. And so it didn't happen for me until 42. But if it opened the door for us to adopt or to do anything like that, I was readily available for that as well. So yes, you do have that discussion. Yes, I did, because with him being married before and having 3 children, I did have that discussion. And the discussion was, do you want more children? Because that may have been a deal breaker for me. Because I knew I wanted children. I wanted to be a mother. So it is one of those top 10 questions that you must sit down and have a discussion. Because there are some women who are okay with not wanting to have children.
I hope I don't get in trouble for saying this, but I think this is something that's not said. Money, sex, and religion. Mm-hmm. Those are 3 things that have to be covered on a regular. And I think you need to talk about what that looks like. What are your expectations in all of those things? Are you on the same page? Are you equally yoked? One thing that I admire about my wife is that when we were dating, she told me, if you're not going to commit to me, then we can't keep seeing each other. She put her foot down. That was big for me. It shook me to my core because I'd never met anybody like that before. I was like, well, but I want to be with you. I want to have a relationship with you. She said, well, we're getting to a place now where we need to make up our minds. So, that drew a line for me, right? So then we had to start talking. What does that mean? Right. And what does marriage look like for you? I like to call it the relationship DNA. But based on how you grew up, what does relationships look like for you? And what did that look like for us? Because ours was going to be different. Sex. What does that mean to you when I talk about sex? Mm-hmm. Is that something that, are you just want to have one child? That means we're going to have sex one time? Yeah. What does that mean? Are we going to have fun? Because I want to spend my life having fun, right? And then, of course, the big one is religion. Where do you worship? How do you worship? What do you believe in? Because nowadays we use the term God, but it's loose. We use the word Christianity. That's loose, right? I believe in the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit, right? Jesus Christ is my Lord and Savior. Is he yours?
You could just be spiritual.
You could be spiritual, right? And I got friends now who wives are just spiritual, and there's conflict in the marriage. Mm-hmm. That's important. So you got to have those roots. What does that look like for you?
I like that.
Yeah.
I like that.
Another one that I think is very important. I love the sex, religion, and money. Those are definitely deal breakers and things that you must discuss. But I also wanted to throw in there that you also have to discuss, and this is something that's a little more light, but how you plan to schedule your lives, how you will distribute time. My mom-in-law and father-in-law live in Cincinnati, Ohio. So what we have had to do is divvy up holidays. Where will we spend Thanksgiving? Where will we spend Christmas? Because my family is all here. She has no family here. It's unfair for my children to just know my family. So my mother-in-law is one of 15, 14. My father-in-law is one of 16. It is my desire that my children know each one of those aunties and uncles' names. I've got 4 aunts and uncles on my dad's side, 3 on my mom's side. That's easy. But for them to remember 16 aunts and uncles' names, that's a whole nother. And so I don't want that imbalance of them not knowing their Cincinnati family juxtaposed their South Carolina family. So we have to be deliberate in saying that every Thanksgiving for the last 15 years of my life, we have been in Cincinnati, Ohio. Every Thanksgiving. Christmas, we decided we're going to stay home because we want our kids to wake up in South Carolina, wake up in their home for Christmas until they're old enough to know the difference. So guess what? Cincinnati comes to South Carolina for Christmas. So little things like that can really change, make or break. If I didn't value the relationship with my wife's family, my children would be short-ended on that. And my wife would end up resenting me if she loves her family. Yeah. So I think that we have to make real strong decisions and draw boundaries. Let my mom and dad know we're not eating turkey together probably ever, unless you cook it, because we're going to Cincinnati on Thanksgiving. And that's something that you have to deal with. And I think that it causes a lot of problems, even with church attendance. What church are we going to go to? Those are all decisions that you have to make. How are you going to budget your time between families and activities?
And to add to that, one thing that my wife brought to my attention, because we heavy tradition, family tradition, on our side, but she also said, well, we have to make our own memories. We have to have our own family traditions too. I want us to have something that our children can say is ours. And that was hard for me because, I grew up where, ever since I can remember, Christmas, no matter what, Christmas morning, I was home at my mom and dad's house. That was it. Me, my son, my sister, all of us was home. And when I brought my wife, I immediately expected, well, you just come to our house. That's what we do. And then, a couple of years in, and we also had that discussion where we were going to spend, holidays. But after a while, she was like, okay, this is great, but we also need to start building our own traditions, right? And then, not necessarily with that, but the other thing that came to mind when you were talking was, how are you going to now, or we want to have children, how are we going to raise these children? What are your beliefs when it comes to, rearing them, training them, so forth and so on? Do you believe in spankings? Those things. And, that could, again, I got friends who are unequal on that. In our house, we have an understanding that, if a spanking is called, we won't spare the rod, right? We won't beat them, but we won't spare the rod.
I think you need to beat him every now and then.
Well, that was my dad. Yeah. But where you going? Well, I'm just gonna hit the boy.
That's exactly right.
When he think about doing something wrong, he'll think about the hit he got.
Because you don't do something wrong
That's
eventually.
Right. So we won't do that. But I also believe in I teach my kids, all of them, from my oldest boys to my girls, everything that I know. And then on the other side, I expect my wife Shanda to teach them everything that she knows, because we want them to be complete people, right? And we want them to have exposure, right?
I think one of the other things when you're talking about what you need to ask again or have a good, deep discussion on are your roles within the marriage. Who's responsible for what? Because now gender roles are changing, right? Because it used to be everything on the outside of the house is man's job, and everything on the inside is a woman's job. But now that women are not necessarily at home all the time, they're working, they have professions, you can sit down and have a discussion regarding what roles you're going to take on. Who's going to take out the garbage? I know it's, who's going to be responsible for the cars? Who's doing dinner? Are you having those discussions?
All right. Let me get in some trouble here.
Go ahead, get us some good trouble, right?
Yeah, some good trouble. I think that society and culture has tricked us into this role reversal, in our Christian marriages. I think society has fooled us. I think it's a trick of the enemy upon us into this whole role reversal, because what happened is society made us think that we really need more than we do. That's what happened. And now you have both parents out of the household at all times. And there's other people training and raising up and rearing our children in those crucial, critical years. I'm not saying that we don't all have our own dreams and ambitions, but y'all, that's not how God set it up. God set it up for us to be one. We got one goal. We got one ambition. We got one vision. Anything with two heads is in a museum somewhere because they found a freak of nature. And so we are one, therefore we have one vision. And one thing that COVID-19 pandemic has taught me is that I really don't need as much. I really don't need as much. We really don't need as much. Before COVID, my wife got dressed, she went to work, I got dressed, I went to work. But then when the pandemic set in and we were home, we enjoyed the fact that we didn't have to get out and leave each other. But then when it started to open up and I was getting out more and my wife was at home with a headset on doing customer service, she began to not like the job that she liked before the pandemic because it just wasn't her personality. It wasn't what she felt like she ought to be doing daily. And when I found out, wow, you know what? We are saving money. We don't need that which we thought we needed. All right? God has placed us in a position that we have agreed that I'm going to be the provider. That I'm going to be the provider. And she's going to do those things in the home, which is a job, which is a career, by the way, that biblically it tells us and shows us how God really designed this thing to work for the family. And for me, the most important thing outside of God and Jesus Christ is my family. And doing it in the order that God has set it up, that's what's going to make us all happy.
Alignment.
You mentioned that word earlier.
Alignment.
Yeah.
Alignment is very important. I tell young couples all the time, the whole goal is we see these movies where they talk about superpowers and what you can do. And the Bible clearly tells us that when two come together, you have the power of 10,000. Where, one has 1,000, two has 10,000. So you immediately become a superpower when you come together. So you're swinging with the force of 10,000, right? So that's amazing. And, to be able to harness that power, so to speak, because that's what we're essentially trying to do when we get married. We're trying to become one, so we're trying to figure out how to harness that power. But getting back to what Terry said, I think that it's a misconception when we talk about roles of the household, right? As the head of the house, I'm supposed to be a Jesus-like figure. And if I'm a Jesus-like figure, that means I'm compassionate. That means I'm caring. That means that I'm all those things who Jesus Christ is. So that means that my household should not be afraid of me, but I still have full authority. So I love everyone in my house to submission. I don't force them into submission.
That's right.
Right? So when they come to me, this is open arms. This is daddy love. This is me sacrificing in silence, learning to go to my knees to fight my battles and loving my family that's right in front of me, because that's the most important thing. So in my home, I don't mind picking up wherever I need to pick up. Quincy said it earlier, sacrificing wherever I need to sacrifice to make sure that we're whole, right? And bringing that to the table, but also showing my girls, what a man really is, what he's supposed to do. I can be tough when I need to be tough, but I'm more loving than anything. I want my wife to know that she can talk to me. I'm not her boss, right? I'm her partner. I'm her co-laborer. We're together in this. And if she's lacking for whatever reason, I'm there to make sure the proverbial ball keeps moving and vice versa. I think we should walk away from that, because it's not the same time. Growing up, don't hate me, Daddy. But I literally remember my dad walking past stuff in the house and be like, "There's some trash on the floor," and looking around like, "Who's gonna pick it up?" He just started taking out the trash, a couple of years ago. So, but in my house, I wash dishes, I fold clothes, I take out the trash, I cut grass, I do whatever needs to be done to make my house complete.
Absolutely.
And I think that's where, when I talk about ownership, I own my family. I own them. Yeah. They're mine, and not outside of that. There's always going to be home. Me and Shanda are going to provide that for us, and however we got that dynamic going is first God and what He has in store for us to be in alignment, and then from there we're going to execute accordingly.
Yeah, I like how you said that, because my wife and I, we were having that discussion one day, because because we like different things to eat, and she likes how I cook what she likes, and vice versa. So we'll be and I'll do laundry. And one day she just said, "Thank you for helping me." And I said, "No, thank you for helping me, because all of this is my responsibility. God gave you to help me. All of this is mine. All of it is my responsibility," because that word roots back to a Hebrew word. It really means communicator. God gave you somebody to communicate all of this that God gave you and appointed you to do and help you with it.
I want to steal from Charles. He talked about DNA earlier, and we know that DNA is something that is passed down.
Yes.
And I think that when it comes to the roles in a marriage, it can also hinge on how you were raised, the dynamics in the homes that you came from. In my case, I went into the game looking for a family structure similar to mine. So just like my family, my wife comes from a dual parent home. Both of us come from probably 2 to 3 generations, I think 3 generations back, of dual family homes. And so that was something that I looked for. With that being said, my mom is educated. My wife's mom is very educated. All of the women in our family are working women who are educated, but both of our moms are what I would say working homemakers. Growing up, I witnessed my mom serve my father, but my mom retired from the University of South Carolina. I watch her wear a business suit to work every day, but my dad was at the head of the table every day, every night, and she served him, and we did not eat until my father ate. So that was and my wife was raised in the same exact structure. So that is the skeleton of how we were raised. However, it is our families now, my family looks so much different than her family did. And the reason why I say that is, for example, my wife will cook a meal, but she will tweak the meal for the children because she knows what I like, but she will kind of tweak it because the children may not necessarily eat what I like. At my mom and dad's house, whatever my mama cooked was what we were going to eat. You know, and so sometimes my wife will cook and I will wash the dishes. Growing up, if my mama didn't wash the dishes, my sisters did. I never washed the dishes. As a matter of fact, when my older sister got married, my mom and dad installed a dishwasher because that was not something that I was trained to do. So our families were the same. The DNA was the same, but because of differences in the demands of our lives now, because of activities, because of having to go to baseball and to soccer and to cheerleading and to now, my wife doesn't do everything. I do things, and whatever it takes to make what I own, I love that. Baby, we own it, but to make what I own better, I'm willing to do it. I'm willing to make those sacrifices. But I think that when you go into the marriage, your DNA expectation or the expectation of the DNA, there has to be an agreement on who's going to play what role, who's going to do what. And my wife, we always laughed that my mom, whenever we would ask for something, she would always say, go ask your dad. Go ask your dad. Now that I'm a grown man and I'm married, I realize that much of what the Lord has blessed us with, it was because my mother was a great manager of what my father produced. My mother was a great manager of what my father produced. So although she always told us to go back to the authority figure, on the back end now as a grown man, I realized that she submitted to his authority. She submitted to that authority. So with that being said, I think that sometimes we can say we are the head of the household and that they submit to us. Yes. And that can, in the eyes of today's concept, downplay the role of the wife in the relationship. But now that I'm a grown man, I realize that without my mom, everything that my dad ever did would have crumbled. My grandmother, everything that my grandfather ever purchased would have crumbled because my mom was the driving force to holding it together. But that's not seen on the outside. My mom took pleasure in making sure that my dad was seen as the king and that we submitted to him as the king of our family. So I think that all of those dynamics play into the roles and how we look at them and how our children perceive them. Goes back to DNA. I'm gonna stop.
That was excellent. Excellent. Yeah. So in talking about communication, how important is communication in the marriage? As far as tonality, approach, because we know you cannot approach a man a certain way. I'm asking that because I hear some ladies complain a lot, say, I asked him 100 times to take that trash out or to fix that thing that's been falling down all year, and he still has not done it. Can y'all help the ladies understand why it's probably not been done yet?
Well, yeah, I think so. Well, Quincy said something earlier. He said a lot of great things, but one thing as it relates to this, I'm a grown man, right? And I think for all men, when we say that for a reason. That means I am not a child. And if you have children, those are the only children you have in the house to talk to in a certain manner, and I'm not one of them. So the tone you apply to me when you ask me to do something, it shouldn't be a telling. You should never talk to me and I should feel like this. Right. But vice versa. I should never talk to her and she feel like I'm doing this. That's right? But as a man, that's extremely disrespectful to us. Yeah. Extremely disrespectful to us because if I am the authority, then do you speak to other authorities like that? Mm-hmm. Because that's the other dynamic that we're playing in. Right. You wouldn't talk to your boss like that at work. Mm-hmm. Right? And I'm not saying I'm your ultimate boss, but you did identify that I am the head of the house, so why are you treating me like that? Right? And are you telling me or are you asking me? Because tone says a lot. Right? Something that I discovered recently in my marriage, and this didn't even have nothing to do with me. We were talking about different things in the house, and I love you, baby. I clean the bathroom most of the time, and I don't mind, But I asked her one day, I said, Shanda, why don't you clean? I said, why don't you clean the bathroom? I said, did you clean the bathroom growing up? She said, yeah, I clean the bathroom all the time. It made sense to me. We'd never talked about that before. She didn't like cleaning the bathroom because that was something she was tasked with as a child. I don't like raking because my dad made me rake all the time. I hate raking leaves. Leaves to pile up and everybody's looking at me like, well, I'm not gonna rake because I don't like raking. But I think those are things that we have to be very mindful of and talk about, likes, dislikes, and then on what level, right? And then that whole communication piece, they yell in my in-laws' house, and that's their communication piece. I remember Curtis said something about growing up. I never liked yelling. I never liked being yelled at or fussed at. And when that happens to me, I do this. I go into like a shell. Yeah. I think, matter of fact, Terry said something like that when she was in this seat. But when you yell at me, I revert back. Yeah, I shut down. And then, as a man, I can never really respond in my full manship, my manhood. I can never respond like that. That's not cool, right? Because Shanda told me I could come across as very ferocious. So we have to understand that as well. And sometimes when the emotions kick in, we have to understand the emotions that's tasked behind something. So her emotion, her response to things is not what, when she gets upset, she gets defensive and she'll roar back at me. So I have to understand that at that point that I must have pressed a button, right? Some people might cry. She's not a crier, but she's going to do that. That's the way she responds. So I have to know that I can't do that, right? I have to be really gentle. I have to be kind. I have to be very respectful and mindful of what's going on. The scenario, a lot of times, it don't even have nothing to do with me. It could be something that's going on at work or in her life that I might not even be aware of. And because I didn't want to pay attention to some of the subtle cues, now she's not willing to even tell me what's going on, right? And I don't want to be a fixer, but I do want to be a prayer. Mm-hmm. Because I know that's where things actually get done. So I try to draw back, as it says, slow to speak, quick to listen, right? And also watch. And then I immediately know now, sometimes I just have to go to prayer, right? And that's my communication piece as a man. My communication piece is getting on my knees saying, Father, I don't know what it is, but you do. Will you reveal it to me, right? Can you bring peace in this house? Can you do X, Y, and Z, right? I yield to him first. And then everything else kind of subsides.
Give me some love, cuz.
I think that with the communication piece, I would like to say that I think the more responsibilities that we've taken on as a family, the Lord has grown us in children, he's grown us in assets, the more that he has blessed us with, the communication becomes more important and the communication becomes harder. I think that I have been personally forced to communicate more as of late than I was at the beginning of my marriage, because at the beginning of our marriage, everything was flowers and hearts and right. But the more the Lord has blessed us with, the busier our schedules have become. And the reason why I'm saying I am is because it's been the responsibility of me lately to communicate more. When we first got married, I'd be like, I'll be back. Now it's more of, I'll be back at such and such o'clock, and this is what I'm doing at these moments. And I owe that to her. She is raising my 3 children. There's not a need that I have that she does not meet as a wife. Mm-hmm. So the least that I can do is verbalize what my intentions are. I owe that to her, and she owes it to me, vice versa. But it's just ironic that she's more prone to communicate than I am. So with that being said, I realize that it's very important that we verbalize those things. And sometimes it's the obvious. But for my wife, she just wants to make sure that I say it, because sometimes things cement a little different whenever you hear it come out of the mouth. So I should not expect her to just know it. She wants to hear me say it.
Mm-hmm. All right. If you ask that question to 100 people, what's the most important thing in marriage, all right, or in a relationship, 99 people would say communication or communication. Men, women alike. Communication. But are we willing to take a look at how we communicate? Because most of those 100 people have no idea how to communicate. And we communicate on levels that are abusive, because some of us come out of abusive relationships and abusive family networks, there's a lot of things that we have to unlearn, when we go into, when we're preparing ourselves for marriage. We got to unlearn this because it was taught to us and we have begun to take on that practice, but it's not right. It's not right. And a level of communication that is open, that is embracing, all right, that is peaceful, is the only kind of relationship, communication, I think, that's going to help a marriage stay together and stay strong. And we can't be afraid to communicate the things that might sound kind of corny, right? Because I can't assume that she knows what I need. My wife and I, we have a marital manual, at the beginning of our marriage, when we were going through, before our marriage, we were going through marital counseling, that we revisit. And as a matter of fact, coming up here, I said, because some changes are about to be made in our lives, new careers, new place of residence, a new addition to the family. And I said, I'd like us to take time to revisit, our needs, do a needs assessment. Because I'm going to need some different things from my wife now. And so is she going to need some different things from me. So that communication has to be intentional, right, like you said, Brother Quincy.
Right. And so that'll bring us to the next thing is I know you've probably heard about the 5 love languages. And for those of you who might not be aware of what they are, and Terry, help me if I forget some of them. It's acts of service, it's gifts, it's physical touch, it's words of affirmation, and quality time. How important is that to know your spouse's love language?
Very, very important. Very important because that's the way to communicate, right? It's kind of like we, all of us are believers, so we won't know the character of God if we don't read his word.
Right.
Right? So, I mean, if we don't know the character of our spouse, then how are we going to know how to receive them, how to do anything with them if we don't know what that is, and then learn it? I mean, that should be, I like to look at, going back to communication a little bit and listening to Curtis. Yeah, I like to look at where we're at in marriage almost as we compare ages of children, right? So we've been married 16 years, so now we're old enough to drive. And year 1 or 2, we're just learning how to get along, right? So you have to start picking up on those things. Yeah. And now I'm at a place where I can communicate with Shanda without necessarily having to talk with her because I know what that language is, right? And vice versa. I think it's really important to know those things because on a bad day, you can make it good, and on a great day, you can make it great if you know how to communicate appropriately. Right? And then you also know how to move out the way, right? Because most of the time it's not even about me.
I think that, I'm sorry.
No, please, question.
With the love languages, we actually went through that in our premarital counseling as well. We had to read the book and then do the assignments from it. And it talks about in the book about filling the love tank. Yeah. And filling the love tanks means whatever it takes to express that love language to your counterpart, you do whatever it takes to fill their love tank. Your goal is to keep their love tank full. But where I find the issue is many times what I did, what we did, and what people do, married people do, is you try to fill their love tank with what you want.
That's what it is.
Right. And so, for example, my love language is service. I love to take care of my wife. I love to lavish her with gifts. Mm-hmm. I love to give her things. It makes me feel good. Mm-hmm. But I've learned a lesson that whenever I'm trying to fill her love tank, I can't give her anything. My wife is affirmation and she likes quality time. Right. So she could care less what gift I give her. She wants me to sit there and listen and look and do absolutely nothing at all. That's it. That is her love language. But that absolutely that means nothing to me. But so what I have to learn is if I want to see her tank full, I've got to do what makes her full. Right. So that's where the misconception about the love languages is, because we try to do what we like for that person.
That's right. That's exactly. I think that remember it's not about us. It's not. Our focus should be 100% on our spouse, right, and our spouse focus should be 100% on us, and that way both of us will take care. Right.
I mean, it made me feel real crazy when I would give her a million things. And she's like, you know what? That's nice. I love this. And it works. But you could have just done this. And I'm like, well, dog.
I think what it is too, think about this. We're talking about languages. Her primary love language is probably quality time, like you said. So if you are gift giving, it's like speaking, if you speak English and your partner speaks Spanish, you got to figure out a way how you can
Break that
communicate.
barrier.
Otherwise, you got to be doing grunts and pointing, and it's just not effective. So you have to learn, she's speaking Spanish, you have to learn how to speak Spanish.
That's right.
And that's how you have to look at this thing.
But the worst thing that you could ever do is what we often do, is try to speak Spanglish.
Oh, now it's all
That's
confusing.
the worst thing that you could ever do, is try to make a concession for what you're not doing.
That's right.
Like,
Yeah, but you just have to, as you spend time together, you
Right.
learn that person's
You learn
language.
that
Right.
Or if you
Right.
can't learn, you ask, and that's part of the communication.
Right.
You verbalize,
Right.
because again, she doesn't expect you to be a mind reader,
Right.
and vice versa.
Right.
So you have to ask the question,
Right.
honey, what is it about this? Yes, I know you love to give gifts, and like I said again, periodically, the number of years you're together, it may change.
Right.
So that assessment that you do,
Right.
it's critically important for you to do. Is your love language still acts of service? Because I notice, I'm doing these things around the house and everything, and you're just not responding, and she may have changed.
might have changed.
Quality.
Glad you mentioned that, because it happened to me. The first question, marriage for me is transformative. Listen, mine was not quality time, but my wife's was. Gifts and quality time. Well, at the beginning of our marriage, my wife had, we agreed upon date night. Okay? So we did the date nights. We continued to do the date nights. And then we changed the night, all right, to another night when our schedule changed. All right? So we kept on doing these date nights. And then one day we realized that we didn't have to talk about date night anymore. We didn't have to plan date night. You know why? Because one of mine became quality time. Because I loved the date night. And now every night's a date night. Like, it's just because both of us love date night, we just do date night all the time. So things change in marriage as we communicate those things. I had a professor in seminary who asked me this question. He said, everything's a text, George. You better learn how to read. So that's what we better learn how to do in our marriages, is read our mate,
And learn and carve out that time. I think no matter what marriage is, what your love language is, that quality time, even if it's, people think quality time means hours. It can be 10 to 15 minutes that you give that person your full attention. This little thing in our hand has really interrupted our time and communication with one another. You can watch people at dinner. They've both got their phones out. Now, to me, unless you're trying to find something to talk about on that phone should be put down. It should be turned off. My attention should be directly on you and vice versa, because you need to know what's on your spouse's heart, what's going on in their mind, what's going on in their life. Have their goals changed for themselves? Do they need you to support them in doing whatever it is that they have now chosen to do in their lives, especially when the children start growing up and going away? Now there's a whole nother dynamic happening. So the only way you're going to know about the changes that's happening in your mate is if you sit down, carve out the time, and ask. And have honest communication. I keep honest communication, because we communicate. I've said this before. We communicate. It may not necessarily always be honest. Yes. And what you owe to your mate is to be honest about what you're thinking, how you're processing that, so that they can either assist you if you need assist, or step back to allow you to come to the forefront and do what it is that you are purposed to do, that God has given you. And so, to undergird and support one another. But you don't know that if you're just assuming, well, she's okay or he's okay, and you just keep letting life push you along instead of being intentional.
And to add to that real quick, I think that we have to do, especially speaking from a man's perspective, we have to create an environment where our spouse feels comfortable with being open, honest, and transparent with us. The book is, there's a book called Naked Marriage, but if I don't create an environment where you feel comfortable with being naked around me, then you're always gonna hide. You're always gonna be covered by the fig leaves, right? And I'll never be able to see who and what you really are. And we really wanna see what that is, then we have to create that environment. So when you come to me, I have to be like this. I can't be defensive. I can't wanna attack you. I can't interrupt you. I'm sorry, baby. I know I do that sometimes. I can't interrupt in the middle of the conversation because I think I know where you're going with something, right? I jump into conclusions, and I can't always be in a mode where I want to fix. It's not about fixing you. It's not my job to fix you. Right. I have to be able to listen to you, and sometimes I just need to be able to listen to a sounding board, so to speak. And then if you ask for my opinion, then I should give my opinion. But if not, I should be there as a sounding board for you. And it's vice versa. And my relationship is a lot different because I'm the communicator in my house. My wife isn't. So I'm the one that always want to talk about something. And, she needs time to process. So I have to respect that as well. And because of that, we create a place where we can be open, honest, and transparent with each other.
Let me ask you this, Charles, because this has been an experience in some relationship for me and other people, men that I talk to in past relationships. When a person asks you for their opinion, as you just said, and just doesn't really accept your opinion is just that. How do you, you know what I'm saying? How do you respond to that? How do you?
In my marriage, we enter it like this, sweetie. I'm not trying to pick a fight with you.
Which usually means there's going to be a fight.
No, we've got really good at this now. In my house is, I'm not trying to pick a fight with you. I'm really not. This is my opinion.
Okay.
That's it, right?
Oh, you preface your opinion.
This is my opinion, and this is how I feel. Because that disarms us, right?
Okay.
Because immediately if I go into a situation, especially if it's a hot button that we talked about in the past, when you go back into it, like finances, for instance, when we start talking about budgeting and finance, immediately she'll get like this. And I'm like, I just want us to be aware of what we're doing. That's all I'm trying. That's what I'm thinking. But she's like, you're treating me like a child. And I don't want to hear that. So I have to go into it with, this is how I feel. We can talk about how we're going to handle it, but this is how I feel. So I have to go in it like that and go in with an open mind and make sure that I'm not like this. Because sometimes she said to me in previous conversations, and I didn't think about it, she said that the not just how I say things, but what I say. And I know that I have a really sharp tongue. I've always had a really sharp tongue, so I had to learn to tame it. Because she said I can say things to her sometimes that's like a hot knife through butter. And I didn't even realize it, right? So she had to tell me that, and I had to be aware enough to know that. So and sometimes I have to know when to just suffer in silence too. My opinion, I just kind of, and wait for it to come back up a little later.
Yeah. And timing is everything too.
Timing is everything.
Timing is everything. It may not be the right moment to say your feelings. And I think that you said the speak, sometimes your verbalization of certain things can be like the hot knife coming through butter. I learned that growing up because I had sisters, I couldn't fight them. I was raised as a gentleman. You don't touch a woman at all. And so what we learned to do is to say our way through some things. And so I had to start catching myself. Right. Because you can't say it like that, because saying certain things in certain ways could be just as demeaning as raising your hand. And so I have to reapproach, Lord, how can I say this correct? Season my words with wisdom, Lord, or just shut me up, Lord.
Right. And in my BC days, that's before Christ, my career was salesman. And then after Christ, to preach it to a certain extent, it's just not selling, but trying to convince, to persuade. Right. So I learned of myself that I can't be trying to sell something to my wife or persuade her. I just gotta, allow her to, that's your opinion, this is my opinion, what do you think we should do? I shouldn't try to sell my point to someone else. Yeah, give them the latitude to make their own decision on the matter, and then we confer about it.
So really quick, I know our time is getting short, but it is 2 questions I really want us to hit on before our time is up. The first question is, and I'll go ahead and just put both of them out there, the importance of still dating your spouse even after the marriage. Second question is individuality. There's a lot of marriages where the wife may go into it, of course, as the helpmate, whichever way you want to say that. But how important is it that the wife maintains her individuality as far as if she has visions and goals also, versus pretty much entering into the marriage and start sacrificing her goals, dreams, and visions, and now just 100% focusing on that of the husband?
I'll speak to both of those. The first one, as far as the date night is concerned, I think that as our marriage has matured, 13 years in April, our goals as far as date night have changed. At first, date night was a night at home watching movies, snuggled up on the couch. Mm-hmm. But after having to clean that house, having to mind the children in that house, our date night totally looks different now. A date night now is drive to Charlotte and spend the night. Mm-hmm. It has changed now because her thing now is she wants a reprieve from the norm. So our date nights have evolved and have become more intentional. She wants creativity placed on them, and I do as well. We want to make sure that each one, we remember what we did during that time. And I think it's important for a healthy and thriving marriage, just like anything else in life. If you work on a job, that job, if they really value you as an employee, they're going to send you to training sessions. They're going to make sure that your licensures are updated. They're going to make sure that you have the tools that you need in order to be successful. Date night is having the tools that you need in order to be successful. And as my wife always says, what you did to get me is what you will have to do to keep me. And during that point in our relationship, I was trying to blow minds. I was doing all kinds of stuff. So, I mean, what do you want to do? You want a parachute this weekend? I was doing all kinds of things. We would go skiing, literally. We would go to the beach for no reason. We would do things like that just to whitewater rafting, just to make sure that I was showing her, baby, I'm going to give you the world. And so that is what she is looking for. And that is what I enjoy now with date life. And in order to make sure that her individuality is maintained and mine as well, we invest in what the other partner loves the most. I make sure that anything she wants to accomplish, I pour all my energy, all of my assets in making sure that I'm going to give her the opportunity to try that thing.
Mm-hmm. I look forward to getting there. I look forward to going there. When it evolves, I mean, listening to you, and I understand the evolution. As the family unit grows, as your responsibilities, your life grows, I like that. But I think that individuality, and I think that's one of the questions you should talk about. The topics you should talk about before marriage. Because like Charles said, hey, God put me, I'm in charge of this and I'm serious about it. So I think that our goals and objectives and vision should be here. We agree upon it. Now, this is what God's telling me we ought to do. Anything that don't fit inside of this vision, it don't mean that it can't ever happen just right now in this season. This is where God has us. And there's no individuality for me. There's no individuality for her inside of that vision. It is us. We won. And we're trying to achieve this which God has put before us.
I agree. I think with both sentiments. I definitely agree with the oneness. I can't get away from that. A couple of years ago, we really started focusing on being one in every aspect of our life, that we could become one. I wanted to eliminate anything. Matter of fact, even in conversations, there's no you or I, it's us and we, right? That's always our conversation. And I'm quick to correct her in myself because I want you to think like that. It's never me. It's always us and we. So, we want to do that. And then the other piece is when we come to those moments where we might want individuality or we're thinking about different things, put it on the altar. We pray about it. And I'm at a place now where I won't move on the thing unless God has given us the okay. And that means if we have to wait 10 years, 2 years, or 2 minutes, doesn't matter. All right, babe, cool. Well, I'll just put it on the back burner. We're going to pray on it. And then when God reveals it to us, we'll know, we'll move on it. That's how we're going to operate as one. Now, date night. Date night is one of the best things that could possibly happen in a marriage. I believe in treating my wife like the woman I started dating a long time ago. I like to give her flowers. The girls were teasing because Valentine's Day I didn't give her flowers, and then they said, "Well, Daddy always bring flowers." And my mom, I give homage to my mom. My mom made it a it made it a primary thing in my life that my wife was to be spoiled and treated like a queen at all times. So, you know, when she comes home from work, I will make sure sometimes that she has her favorite beverage and her bath water is ran and dinner is prepared. Or we'll have, I've done things where the girls, you know, help cook dinner and they served us, you know, to give, especially during the pandemic. But to always give that relief, so to speak, to get away from the norm, to treat her special, to let her know that above anything else, you're on a pedestal. And I want you to stay on that pedestal. It is you first, you know, and here is you first. It's God and you, but it's you first, and then it's us. And this is going to become that moment when it's just going to be us, right? The girls are going to be gone. I'm not going to keep grandchildren all the time, and I don't want to. Matter of fact, we're looking forward to the time when it's just us. So we have to spend those moments now getting to know one another, those changes that come through, so that when the time does come for her to have those individual moments, that I can support her. You know, I'll know where you want to go, and we can kind of point together and execute at the same time.
Right. I think one of the biggest pieces of advice was given to us was to replace I, my, and me with our, we, and us. But let me tell you something funny. The other day, my wife went in the refrigerator. She's 4 months pregnant. She shouted out, "Listen, I know that we said our, but this food is mine right now." And she deserves that. That's what's up. She deserves that. And I give her that. And I was like, okay, baby, let me run down to the store and get some more right now. You know, and I'll you know, so yeah. That space and respect is really, really important. Thank you.
Well, it has been a pleasure spending time with you guys today. Awesome. A wealth of information, and thank you all for being so transparent and sharing with us. So in closing, if you had to leave one last thing with the audience, what would that be?
I'll say this, especially for younger couples, and God told me this a long time ago because I was dealing with it. He told me that no one in my house would submit to me until I submitted to him. And that was transformative in my life. And it doesn't happen overnight. I don't expect you to if you're an alcoholic, I don't expect you to put down the drink and stop drinking. God can do it, but I don't expect it to happen all of a sudden. But that submitting piece, if you really want to be the head of your household, then you need to learn how to submit, just like Christ submitted to his Father. And you need to learn how to be humble, right? Just like he was humble. And you need to learn how to suffer in silence to take care of your family. So I would truly ask you to submit to Christ. Go to him on your knees and allow him to eradicate, fix, bind, and pull together your home.
I'd like to say to always remember that wherever you are in a marriage, whatever triumph, whatever challenge, you are there because God has been there. And God has brought you to the place that he already foreknew. And because God has been there, he's prepared the path forward.
One of the things that we adopted early in marriage is that, and this is jolting at first, marriage is not for happiness, but marriage is for holiness. Marriage is not for happiness, but it's for holiness. In other words, God puts the mate that he has selected for us in our lives to get us to a place of wholeness and holiness so that we can show the world, so that we can give back to him the gift that he has placed on the inside of us. So what my wife does to buffet me and to challenge me makes me holy unto God. What I do to challenge and buffet my wife, our resolution of our problems makes us holy unto God. And that is why we call it a holy matrimony.
Now that was supposed to be the last statement. I like that. That was supposed to be the last statement.
And thank you to our wonderful audience for tuning in to another edition of Time to Unpack Talk Show. We look forward to seeing you soon.